On the 17th of June 2026, it seemed that the US-Iran war in West Asia would end. Both countries, with Pakistan's mediation, had reached a comprehensive understanding on the terms to halt the conflict that had begun on the 28th of February this year. A memorandum of understanding was signed.
You know, the question that you asked about the war finally ending, the peace agreement being signed between Donald Trump and Masoud Pezeshkian, who's the Iranian president, it happened not too far away from Paris, in the city of Versailles, the historic Palace of Versailles, where, of course, the World War I peace treaty was signed. Last night, Donald Trump having dinner with Emmanuel Macron, the French president, and Brigitte Macron, his wife. After the dinner, he signed, on behalf of the United States of America, this peace agreement, this memorandum of understanding. It's called the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, whereby America has conceded to these 14 points, which are part of this agreement. The chief one is about the nuclear question. Yes, Iran says it will not develop or acquire a nuclear weapon, but there is no certainty as far as no further enrichment is concerned. It does mention that Iran will dismantle the existing nuclear infrastructure, particularly the nuclear fissile material, about 400 kilograms of it, under inspections by the IAEA. But more importantly, on the question of war reparations or a war reconstruction fund, $300 billion is what America and its allies are committing to Iran. That's a big, big get for Iran. And two, Iran gets to also start now selling its number one source of revenue, which is export of crude oil. It gets to go back to the international markets and to start selling Iranian crude legally. So all this business of shadow fleets and all of that will stop. As far as India is concerned, yes, this is a huge development because remember, before the sanctions kicked in about 2015-16 or so, Iran was one of the largest countries from where India was importing. It was within the top 5 import sources of crude oil as far as India is concerned. And then suddenly after the sanctions came in, India just stopped Iranian crude almost overnight. Now India gets one more source of crude oil. Remember, 80% of India's crude is dependent on imports. And so you get one more source to try and diversify your import of crude. So this is a win-win, net win-win for India.
The world heaved a sigh of relief because the fallout had been extensive. There were civilian casualties, there was damage to property and energy infrastructure, but the economic impact was felt far and wide because the Strait of Hormuz, through which almost a quarter of the world's energy supplies passed through, was virtually shut. Prices escalated, there was inflation, and countries around the world appealed to both Iran and the United States to end their hostilities.
How long this will go on, because there are many questions thrown up. One, as you rightly mentioned, what happens to the military program, and is Trump likely to take some military action to settle the issue of Iran's nuclear dust or enriched uranium, or whether there will be a more pronounced attempt at regime change in Iran?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, I think Trump agreed to this ceasefire and MOU because he was concerned about gasoline prices for American consumers with an election coming up in 4 months. And the Iranians can sense that, too. They can see that Trump is reluctant to resume substantial hostilities before the election. And I think it allows them to basically to backtrack on the commitments they made to open the Strait of Hormuz up to traffic by everybody. That obviously hasn't happened. And I have to say, in the current circumstances, it's not close to happening. That's why oil prices are going back up. And I think it reveals the basic problem inside the Iranian government, that there's no authoritative figure to say that this is the policy they're going to pursue. Even with this MOU, the Supreme Leader said that he objected to it as a matter of principle.
We speak at a time when we are seeing that the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz has erupted again. Let me begin by your assessment of the situation. Also, was there any element of surprise to the ongoing situation for you?
I think that it's pretty clear that the IRGC is trying to overplay their hand and try to impose something that the world cannot accept, and that is a change of international freedom of navigation. So I think that the United States has stated very clearly they are not going to accept that, and their aggression towards civilian ships is not going to be accepted.
Were you expecting this MOU to hold?
Look, we didn't know that. I think that we respected, and our Prime Minister was very clear with that, we respected the American request to give a chance to negotiations, and in parallel, we are in an effort to stabilize the situation in our region. You probably have seen that we have agreed on a framework with Lebanon. This framework is advancing, and we are now implementing the first part of the framework, and that is the entrance of the Lebanese armed forces into designated areas as a pilot for the continuation of an effort to disarm Hezbollah.
But there was also enough concern that perhaps the peace would not last the distance. There were multiple reasons for this, but some even cited the inherent problems built into the MoU itself, specifically Clause 5. It reads, and I quote, "Upon the signing of this MoU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only, from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. The traffic of commercial vessels will immediately start, and considering the need for removing the technical and military obstacles, and demining by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be instated within 30 days. The Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz in discussion with other Persian Gulf littoral states in line with the applicable international law and the sovereign rights of coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz."
Many have said that this has been a flawed deal. The Iranians have accused the Israelis of violating the MoU. They say that it's a violation because they're continuing with their attacks in Lebanon, of course, because of Hezbollah. But what do you attribute this flaw to in the deal?
I think that there is a different interpretation because the United States didn't agree to allow the Iranians to be the ones that are going to determine the future of Lebanon. The future of Lebanon has to be determined by the government of Lebanon, the elected government of Lebanon, and this is exactly what we're doing. We have actually a common path. And the Iranians, again, like when it comes to Hormuz, they're trying to overplay their hand in Lebanon. We're not going to allow that.
It's interesting you highlight that, but you will not allow Hezbollah to exist, at least not for as long as they don't disarm. So is this war going to continue in West Asia till Hezbollah is not decimated?
Well, we didn't say that Hezbollah is not going to exist. I think it wouldn't be reasonable to expect that. But what we can expect is that the Lebanese government would assume sovereignty over their territory, because Israel has zero motivation to continue occupying southern Lebanon. But we don't want to go back to a situation in which Hezbollah takes control and starts building again military infrastructure in order to attack Israel.
On the 26th of June, Israel and Lebanon announced an America-backed framework agreement as well. In the first week of July, Iran began funeral proceedings of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who along with several of his family members had been killed by US and Israeli airstrikes when the war broke out on the 28th of February. But it all came crashing down on the 7th of July. 3 ships were struck near the Strait of Hormuz. They were using a US-recommended route through Omani waters. Now, Iran has been against this, and it also cited the agreement. Following the strikes on these 3 vessels, there was an American retaliation, and as many as 80 targets were struck in Iran. Since then, the hostilities have grown, and Israel continues making inroads into Lebanon. President Trump visited the NATO summit in Turkey and said that as far as he was concerned, the peace deal was over. He also met the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and pledged the grant of license to manufacture the Patriot missile systems. The war between Russia and Ukraine rages on, and it's been 4.5 years since it began. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Indonesia, where a series of key agreements were signed, including the supply of BrahMos supersonic cruise missile systems to Indonesia, as well as the Astra air-to-air missile systems.
बीते वर्षों में भारत और इंडोनेशिया के संबंधों में एक नई ऊर्जा, एक नया विश्वास और एक नई गहराई आई है, 2018 में बनी हमारी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप आज एक नई उड़ान ले रही है। हम डेवलपमेंट, सिक्योरिटी, टेक्नोलॉजी, कल्चर और एजुकेशन हर क्षेत्र में महत्वपूर्ण कदम बढ़ा रहे हैं।
India has achieved many progress. So I openly admit that I follow your career and I copy a lot of your programs. And it's proving to be successful for us. So thank you very much. I'm very happy there's no copyright to all your programs.
Prime Minister Modi and President Prabowo Subianto spoke about the ancient ties between the two countries, cultural linkages, and of course fears of cooperation now in multiple sectors. The Prime Minister addressed the Indian diaspora in Jakarta. Next stop for Prime Minister Modi, Australia. Like Indonesia, this was a visit of great strategic significance as well, given concerns over what many have said is Chinese muscle flexing in the Indo-Pacific region.
India is a crucial partner for Australia, what we describe as a top-tier defence and security partner, and we hope that what India perceives Australia is as a reliable partner in challenging times. The outcomes will embrace the three big domains of our bilateral relationship. We are strategically aligned and focused on our region, the Indo-Pacific. We have strong complementary economies. That means that Australia produces the things that India needs for the next phase of its economic growth, whether that's energy, whether that's minerals, or whether that's skills and training. And the third big domain relates to the people, the fact that there's now more than 1 million people of Indian origin in Australia who are making a big contribution to our multicultural world. You mentioned the maritime space, and I think that's important.
Even more so after the disturbances in West Asia, you know. And
that's right, but think about it this way. Australia and India can do a lot in defence, but where it might matter the most is where our strategic geographies intersect, and that's in the Eastern Indian Ocean. So I think that's a field that we can go forward on. Look, I'm pleased you mentioned the disturbances in the Strait of Hormuz. That's affected both of our countries, and it's focused my country much more on what we call energy security, being assured of supply. And in that respect, Australia has been a reliable supplier to India of coal and of LNG, and India is an important supplier for us of liquid fuels, including diesel and aviation fuel. So I'm sure the two sides will focus on that as they go forward in this visit. The student relationship between Australia and India is very buoyant. More than 140,000 Indian students in Australia at the moment. But my view is that the education relationship shouldn't be a one-way street. And that's why I'm delighted that Australian universities have answered the Modi government's call for what we call foreign branch campuses. It was Australian universities that established the first foreign branch campuses in India, and many others have followed. And that gives the Indian consumer choice. It gives the Indian family a choice between a high-quality education in Australia and a similar quality education, the same quality education from an Australian university right here in India at a much less cost. So to me, that's what's important about this moment in our bilateral relationship with India. It's about more than a flow of students. Australia and India work very closely through the UN bilaterally in important global forums to counter the scourge of terrorism, and I'm sure that will be reinforced during this visit. The Indian diaspora, it brings colour and vibrancy. It brings a dimension of sophistication and capability, especially in the tech domain, but way beyond that. Very many people of professional skill from the Indian community in Australia. So I think we can get beyond C, D, E and move on to F, which is the fabulous Indian diaspora in Australia.
What is that one fabulous Indian dish that is thoroughly enjoyed in Australia?
I think everyone knows butter chicken and everyone loves it.
India and Australia have also been negotiating a comprehensive bilateral trade agreement and importantly have taken steps towards implementing their civil nuclear cooperation agreement that was signed in 2015. Australia has the world's largest reserves of uranium and India is looking to expand its installed nuclear energy capacity.
भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया की बिजनेस पावर और बिजनेस एम्बिशन के दर्शन एक साथ हो रहे हैं। आप सबकी यहां उपस्थिति हमारे शेयर्ड कॉन्फिडेंस और शेयर्ड एस्पिरेशंस का प्रतीक है। भारत से ऑस्ट्रेलिया को एक्सपोर्ट डबल हुआ है और दोनों देशों के बिजनेसेस को नए मार्केट एक्सेस इसका लाभ मिला है। एआई मिशन, क्वांटम मिशन और सेमीकंडक्टर प्रोग्राम के अंतर्गत भारत सरकार ने $10 बिलियन से ज्यादा का सपोर्ट दिया है। हम डेटा सेंटर, एआई, क्वांटम, सेमीकंडक्टर और डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के क्षेत्र में मिलकर global solutions तैयार कर सकते हैं।
Prime Minister Modi begins his Australia visit today. What are you looking forward to or expecting from this visit? Lots of expectations are riding high. What do you think could possibly be the outcomes in terms of definitive deliverables that both sides can expect?
My expectations are that the relationship will continue to be consolidated. There have been a lot of very big achievements in the relationship over the last 5 years. When I was Prime Minister, we elevated it to the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. There was the Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement. There was, as you referred to, significant advances in where we stood on security issues, our cooperation through the Quad, the reinstallment of the Malabar exercises for defence. So these were very significant developments. And so now is a phase of bedding these in. The government here in Australia that followed mine has followed through on those initiatives and continued a very good relationship with India. I'm there reasonably regularly there myself these days. And look, I think it is consolidating these massive gains and realising, I think, what we've put in place to particularly grow the investment and the trade relationship between the two countries. I think the security and defence cooperation is one that is always present, but I don't think needs a lot of public amplification. I think that just continues on steadily and grows at the pace which I think is appropriate for India.
I want to talk about the trade part, and you mentioned ECTA, the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, which was signed when you were Prime Minister. What is your view of where trade ties stand between India and Australia currently? It's about $24 billion in the last financial year. There is a concern that the negotiation around the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, or SECA, that seems to be stuck on issues of services, on issues of migration, which is a big issue in Australia as well as it is in other Western countries. So what's your view on what the holdup is and whether or not both sides will be able to clinch it during this visit?
Well, look, I hope progress is made, but in any trade agreement with India, I think countries like Australia have learned a great deal of patience. That's why when we were able to reach the agreement on ECTA, we were thrilled. This is something that Australia had been pursuing for a very long time. And there's always been very goodwill towards there being such an agreement. But I think there are many sensitivities on the Indian side when it comes to elements of our trade relationship. But equally in Australia, you rightly mentioned the issues around immigration. We have very strong immigration laws and a very strong system of protections. And that's not going to change. And so I think in any trade relationship, you've got to respect, I wouldn't call them red lines. I mean, it's not a security dialogue, but I would call them just appreciating the areas where both sides are going to have difficulties being particularly flexible. But there are so many other areas where that's not necessary. I think on the services side, I'm particularly sort of excited. I think on the investment side, and that comes from Australia's point of view, and Australia's pension funds being able to invest their significant capital in infrastructure in India, and I'd argue more broadly across South Asia, I think there are significant opportunities, whether it's in ports, whether it's in communications and energy. Particularly on this visit, I understand that green energy partnerships will be part of those discussions. That's fine. But at the same time, India needs to maintain its supply of critical resources out of Australia, in particular coal, and that's necessary as well. That's why I sort of lean back to this position of consolidation. You build where you can, but you make sure what you have is working as best as possible.
After Australia, Prime Minister Modi proceeded to New Zealand, the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to New Zealand in 40 years. A free trade agreement between India and New Zealand had already been signed earlier in the year, but it's awaiting ratification now in the New Zealand Parliament.
Prime Minister Modi starts his New Zealand visit today. That's Friday. It's the first time an Indian Prime Minister is visiting a country in 40 years. What are you expecting in terms of tangible outcomes from this visit?
Prime Minister Modi is going to get a very warm welcome in New Zealand. We obviously are excited to have him coming to visit New Zealand, particularly off the back of our signing of a free trade agreement between New Zealand and India. We think that's a significant milestone for both countries. So we're looking forward to welcoming Prime Minister Modi here in New Zealand so that we can continue to build that relationship. It's an important one for us here in New Zealand. We've got a lot of Kiwi Indians living here. We've also got a lot of opportunity economically to further the links between the two countries, and we're looking forward to being able to explore the opportunities to do that.
Trade, the Indo-Pacific, sports are some of the key pillars of this growing relationship. So yes, it's a world in flux, but India is also strengthening existing relationships that should stand the test of time.
Thank you, Mr. President, Prime Minister.